Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, A Guide to Iris Online's Slot File Management. I'm Megan and I will be introducing today's presenter to you. But before we get started, let's review some housekeeping details so that you know how to best participate in today's webinar. What you see here is a screenshot example of the attendee interface. You should see this window up probably in your top right-hand corner of your desktop. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentation in the questions pane toward the bottom. Our presenter today will do his best to answer your questions as they come in. However, if your question isn't answered, don't worry. He will contact you with a response after the webinar. 45 minutes were allocated to the webinar with time at the very end to answer any questions that you have that are remaining. And now I am pleased to introduce Cobotron Manager of Sales and Support, David Elmore. David joined the Cobotron team in 2016. Prior to Cobotron, however, he worked at GLI as a development representative and technical compliance engineer. He is now a subject matter expert on the Iris Online and enterprise product lines, Verify Plus by Cobotron, and the Gaming Investigator 4000 and its associated hardware. David is currently responsible for overseeing all client orders, information requests, and client issues. He's also part of the research and development team within Cobotron that specializes in cutting-edge software verification tools and techniques. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to David. And without further delay, David, please take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Megan. The first thing I'd like to do is go ahead and start with a poll question to figure out what everybody's current job function is. This will help me better tailor this webinar to this specific audience and your guys' current roles. So you should see the poll pop up now. If you could go ahead and just select one of those categories. Okay, looks like we've got quite a few gaming commissioners with us today. Okay, perfect. Okay, again, this will help me better tailor this webinar to our current group. This way I don't get too technical into the weeds and also not too high up in the clouds to where you're not really benefiting from the functionality of the program.
David, what I'm going to go over, like 51% are gaming commissioners.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Megan. So what I'm going to be going over today is some of the basic uses and benefits of the Iris Online program. So hopefully by the end of this quick demo, everyone will have a pretty good understanding of how the program functions and, more importantly, if it'll work for you. And the biggest benefit at the end is for new users, and what I'm going to do is show you guys how, if you want to try the 90-day free trial, you can essentially get me to perform a free software and examination of your slot file to where I'll be able to identify any non-compliant or revoked components you have on your floor. And that's without you guys ever having to pay a penny. And I have my little webcam up today so you can see that you're actually talking to a real person and not a computer. So with that, before I get started, are there any questions that anybody has they want to throw up right now before we go ahead and get this thing kicked off?
David, nothing's come through yet.
Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and try not to speak too fast or make this feel like you guys are drinking from a fire hose. But if you have questions at any time, go ahead and submit them, and then when we have our next question break, then Megan will go ahead and post those to me. So with that, what you guys should see on your screen now, aside from my face, is the main page of the Iris Online product. Now, Iris Online is just a website. It's not an app you have to download or any sort of software you have to install, which means as long as you can get to the internet, then you can access the program via whatever device you're using, whether that's your smartphone or your Kindle or your iPad. Again, as long as you have an internet connection, you can access the website and get to your information. The main page that you see on the screen right now is the inventory page. This is the main page that you would use for managing your floor. And there's a little menu on the left side here, and it's the second one down where it shows inventory, and this is every machine that you have on your floor and then all the software that is inside that machine. What you can see is colored links that are actually tied to our backend database so that anytime we make a status change, or GLI or a test lab makes a status change to these components, and I mean literally the second they hit enter on the keyboard, if you have that component on your floor or if it affects your account, you will get an email alert real time letting you know that you have no non-compliant software. And if this will go to every user you have, and you can have as many users as you want. We don't really limit that. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a color legend. I'm going to click on now. And for those of you that are having trouble following, I made a special little icon with my mouse here to say cat with a Pop-Tart body and rainbows coming out its back. It's the most colorful thing I could find that seemed like it would be pretty easy to track. So if you're trying to find my cursor, this little icon you see at the top of the screen here, that's it. So if I go to the bottom of the screen, I'm going to go ahead and click on the color legend. You'll see that green obviously is good. Green would be approved components. NU is non-mandatory upgraded components, which is what we used to call obsolete, but the nomenclature for the industry changed, so now it's called non-mandatory upgrades. And then, of course, RV and red is revoked, which would be bad. And then you have conditional revocations, which would be more in the instance of if a program was functional with a backend system, with one type of backend system, but not others. So while it's still compliant, it just is not compliant with some associated systems. And then, of course, in black at the bottom is a non-GLI certified link. If you happen to have other test labs that have tested your stuff, we don't want to ever prevent you from being able to have that within the system as well. But because it is not something that was tested by GLI, it's not something tied to our database. So therefore, if it's ever revoked, you would be dependent upon the other test lab or even the manufacturers to provide you with those advisories letting you know that that software is no longer compliant and that you need to get it off the floor. What you'll see right here on the screen, again, are my machines and all the software inside my machines and the colored links for what is on those machines. If I ever got an alert, a real-time alert, tell me that I had Revoke Software, I can check it a couple ways. The first way that I'm going to cover is when you go into your inventory page and you go to your status dropdown, you can say, listen, show me all the approved stuff or the revoked stuff, all those categories we just discussed. But here I'm going to choose revoked, and then it'll bring up any link that has Revoke Software and the associated machine with it. Now, there's a couple ways to swap it out, but the easiest way is if I right-click on a revoked piece of software, I'll get a little menu here that says remove component, replace component, and I can verify the information as well. What we're going to do is choose replace component, and what that'll do is it'll pop up another window with, and you can see it's colored in green here, the approved replacement component for that Revoke software. So then if I go ahead and hit confirm right here, it'll go ahead and swap out this Revoke component with this approved one right here. So you can see 1.02 is being revoked and 1.03 is a replacement. So if I hit confirm, then this will be removed from my list as being revoked, and you can see that it's now been changed here. And the status alert, where you see red is an alert for Revoke software, it has yellow because we still have a non-mandatory upgraded piece of software on here. But this machine is now compliant. If I wanted to remove software from this machine, all I'd have to do is simply click on the links, the little X's next to them, and I can take off this machine whatever I want. Or if I right-click on a line for a machine, I'll get a second menu. And this is another main menu that you'll be using within the program, where you can do things like adding components, adding non-GLI certified components, removing stuff, adding new machines, cloning machines, editing rows. So if I was moving stuff from, say, one bank to another, or if I was changing the denom on the game, or maybe even the cabinet type, it's really dependent upon what you have in your slot file. Now I can load up to 160 columns of data, although the most I've ever seen is around 90, and generally you're right around, say, 20 to 25 columns of data. Any more than that would sort of be overkill in my opinion, because the biggest benefit, again, of this program is getting real-time status alerts to non-compliant software on your floor, and how easy it is to be able to get that stuff as it happens so that you know that you're 100% compliant at all times, assuming that the slot file that I've loaded in there or the information that is within the program is actually indicative of your physical gaming floors. If I wanted to remove components altogether from this machine at once, let's say we're going to do a bank conversion. What I can do is I'm going to scroll to the right here to one of my columns. And here's some of the typical columns that I see, the most common. Your bank, your zone, your denom, what type of cabinet top is there, or cabinet in general hardware, asset number. What I'm going to do right now is essentially go to our, let's go to the number 1 bank. So I'm just going to type 1 in the category at the top. And every column that you see can be dragged and dropped however you want it. You can also go to your Manage Columns button down here at the bottom of the screen. Just follow the little cat again. And then choose if you want to add or remove these columns, if you want to create your own columns. And then once you verify, hey, this is the view that I want to see from now on, you can actually save this view at the very bottom of the page under Viewing Standard, and then save this new view as your own personal view or your group's view so that it's not set at the default every time you log in. But if it is, you can come in and just click on it, and it'll go ahead and load your particular view. So in this instance, I'm just looking at bank number 1. I have lots of Revoke software on these 3 IGT machines that I've created. But what I'm going to do is if I left-click on a line, it'll highlight the entire machine in blue. And I can hold down Control, and I can click other machines or unclick machines. Or I can just click the top row and hold down Shift, and then highlight all of them. Now, I have quite a bit of software on these machines, so rather than hitting the little X's next to each one of them, I'm just going to right-click again, go to Remove Multiple Components, and it'll show me everything that is on those 3 machines. If I select All, it'll show me that piece of software and then the 3 machine serial numbers that I'm going to be removing it from. If I scroll to the bottom here and I say Remove Components, it'll give me one last chance to say, okay, are you sure you want to take all this stuff off the machines? I mean, yep, that's right. So I submit it. And essentially now I have 3 clean machines. It didn't change the bank or the denom or the zone, any of that information. We're just removing the software from the machines and then adding new software to it. And if for any reason you thought, oh my gosh, I did not mean to do that, right at the top of the page here, there's an undo button. You just hover over that and then highlight the change you want to make. And if you click it, it'll go ahead and undo that action, or you could keep doing it for every action that you've done in a row. So you know that you have, in this particular instance, if you make a mistake, you don't have to worry about it. You can always just undo whatever you've done. And if it was 2 or 3 days later, you can always call me and I'll help you out with whatever you need. So let's go ahead and forward the removal of all the software again, and we'll convert this bank into a whole new group of machines. So here's our 3 clean machines, and I'm just going to right-click again. I have them all highlighted. I'm going to right-click, and it doesn't matter which column I right-click on. It'll add the components to the proper column no matter what, based on what we have in the system. So if I click Add Component, this window will pop up, which will give you access to the database for your particular jurisdiction. So then I can search through any one of these categories. So let's just say they're going to stay IGT machines. I can now filter through all these components and just look at IGT. And in my dummy jurisdiction here, which is for Florida Seminoles, I have just on IGT components alone, you can see on the bottom right here, 10,074 items. For some of you who are maybe in Class 2 jurisdictions, I've seen it upwards of 80 to 90,000 components that you'll have access to. Because this database you're choosing from will have everything that's ever been approved in your jurisdiction, whether it's been approved or revoked or anything in between, since the beginning of when GLI started doing testing for your jurisdiction. I think the oldest I've seen is around 1996, maybe even 95. But if I scroll to the right here, I can actually go to the Date Approved column right here, and I can left-click right next to the name header. And just like any of these columns, it'll sort that column alphabetically or numerically. So here you can see I'm looking at stuff from 2008. I'll click it again so we go the other way, and then we'll probably see stuff approved as of yesterday for this particular jurisdiction in my dummy account. And you can then filter through, even if it's on your floor or not. This, again, is just a database for everything tested in your jurisdiction, and find what it is you're looking for to add to these 3 machines. So if I want to find personality programs, I just need a little bit of the information I'm looking for. Under function, what we'll do is we'll search main first, because we want our main program. And now our 10,000 components go down to 532, you can see on the bottom right. And all I'm going to do is right-click on what I want to add to this machine. So I'll add this to the list. And at the top of the screen now, you'll see my 3 serial numbers for the machines I'm converting, and then my main program. Well, we need personality program as well, so I'll just type PER. You don't need wildcards or stars or anything else. As long as you have some little bit of information of what you're looking for, then you'll be able to find it here. So if I knew that the game name had magic in it and nothing else, the system will pull up every single personality program that has magic in it for IGT, and in this particular case there are 29. So if I know, yeah, it was Magic Butterfly, and let's say it was a couple games we're going to add here. We'll do all 4 of these. I could then just right-click the ones I've highlighted and clicked, and then add those to my list. So once you have your main and your personality, the other 2 categories would probably be your bill validator. So I'll just type bill under function. But we have to remove the game name. And this is a good exercise, because if you see that it doesn't come up right away, make sure that these columns that you're looking at don't have information in there that might prevent you from getting the software that you're looking for. So we remove magic. We're going to go ahead and hit enter, and now it'll bring up every BV that's approved. So we'll just right-click, add one to the list, and then finally we'll do our printer. Again, I'll just write some bit of what I'm looking for, and then right-click one of these, add them to the list. And now you can see my 3 machines, my main program, 4 personality programs, a BV, and a printer. If it looks good, you go ahead and add those selected components to those 3 machines, and then it will populate all those fields automatically for you. Sometimes you'll see these main programs, personality programs, pop up in the other software column. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, because these are all attached to the database no matter what column they're in. You're going to get those status alerts to when they change no matter what. And you can always drag and drop these wherever you want them as well. And if there's other machines, like my other 2, that have the same piece of software, it'll ask if it wants me to move those other 2. And if I say, yeah, that's what I want to do, it'll move those as well. So let's go ahead and get rid of our bank stuff here. Go back to our inventory page. And so here's our 3 newly converted machines. Are there any questions on this first section that I've just covered on seeing the software, removing software, and converting machines so far?
David, 3 questions came through. So I think you might be covering this later, but it seems like a pretty easy question to get out of the way. Melissa asks, when you submit your Excel program, does it matter if your cells are merged?
It does, depending upon what information is in the cell. So, great question. When I load the slot file into the system, essentially what I'm doing is I have separate columns for those program IDs. When the program IDs, maybe they're merged together, you have multiple cells that have multiple software IDs in that column, maybe separated by a comma. I essentially am going to have to create separate columns for each piece of software. So maybe EEPROM 1, EEPROM 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And that's really the only limitation beyond the formatting of the slot file, because if it doesn't match perfectly, I'm going to go ahead and take care of that myself on my end. I'm not going to send you guys slot files back and forth if it's something that I can go ahead and take care of mine within a couple, like a half an hour, or something like that. And because I've loaded over 200 slot files when I've done this, I'm pretty familiar with how to change these Excel sheets pretty quickly. And the program itself is based off an Excel sheet format. So if you're somewhat familiar with Excel, you can hit the ground running pretty fast picking up this program.
Okay, Mark asks, If you'd like to view the dates that software was revoked and recommended upgrade dates, is there any quick reference, more info maybe, somewhere to find that information quickly?
Absolutely. So one of the other things I'll cover in just a moment here is the Components tab. Now the inventory page, like I was saying before, is every piece, every machine that's on your floor. The Components page will show you every piece of software that's on your floor, and you can go look and see when stuff was revoked, the data was revoked, what the upgrade by date is, and then you can always look at the particular reason why it was revoked on the replacement program letter, and then see if it was 30, 60, 90 days as well. So if something was revoked and a timeline was associated with it for when it needed to be removed, you'll be able to see that as well within the system.
All right. Melissa had another question. What is used by the lab and or manufacturer to determine the cabinet type after a machine is installed at a casino?
What is used by the lab or the manufacturer to determine the cabinet type? Really, the cabinet type, as long as it's approved hardware and it doesn't have any sort of effect on game integrity, they're mainly approved altogether. So switching out the cabinet with the software that was originally approved as one package is going to be determined by the Gaming Commission if that's acceptable or not. But boilerplate standard for the industry would be that if it was all approved as a package, hardware, software all together, then you wouldn't want to sort of delineate from separating those unless you knew for a fact by the ITL or from the Gaming Commission's approval that it was indeed didn't have any effect on game integrity and therefore wouldn't cause any sort of concern or opportunity for somebody to cheat or collusion or anything would cause a patron dispute, because compliance is all about keeping your name in the paper for all the right reasons and not the wrong ones.
Cool. Yeah, and Christopher had one last quick question. Does IRIS connect with other testing lab databases?
So right now, IRIS Online is only connected to GLI, but the flagship system we have called IRIS Enterprise, which I'm sure down the road we'll be doing a webinar on that as well, is a much more advanced system, and it is connected to both GLI and BMM's database, and also connected to central monitoring systems of the properties, so that a lot of the manual data input you would do with this system is already taken care of on a daily basis through FTP file imports or other various media.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Keep those questions coming, guys.
Yeah, those are great questions. Thank you very much. So before we get into the next part, let's go ahead and get to our next poll question. And that would be, are you familiar with IRIS Online? Okay, so it looks like we're kind of right in the middle of a pretty good mix. So hopefully after the first part that I was just showing everybody, if you have any questions, again, we're going to stay after a little bit at the end here, so you can go ahead and pass those on to us, and we'll answer them right now at the end of this demo. And if it turns out that you have to go or we can't answer them right away, I will get back to you as soon as I have the answer, so that I can make sure that every question that does come in gets answered in some way. And you have my contact information, so you can reach out to me as well. And I want to get up one more poll question before I start the second part of this, and this is, how are you guys currently checking for Revoke Software? I have a pretty good story where I actually showed up at one Gaming Commission office, and they had a stack of technical advisory memorandums and client advisories as well, and then a stack of letters, and they were actually going through hand sifting through them to find out what matched to verify what's actually compliant on their floor. Okay, GLI access seems to be the bulk of it, or manufacturer notifications, and then other means beyond that. I would be curious about some of those other means, but it looks like generally speaking, most people are using GLI access, which is fantastic. The IRIS Online program actually has a certifications function to it. So if you look on the screen on the left side here menu, you'll see the certifications tab. This will actually give you access to GLI's database, same as what you would access with GLI access. And like when we were adding components before, it'll show you every single piece of software. And again, this will include systems, it'll include BIOS chips. If it's something that was verifiable software, and it was tested and it had a signature within the letter, you will be able to find it within the system for your jurisdiction, whether it's on your floor or not, since the beginning of when we'd ever started doing testing for your jurisdiction. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the second part of the program here, and this will cover a little bit more specific information on how you can verify signatures, how you can access those certification letters, document storage, and more importantly, an activity log, and how you can export out from that activity log certain activities for report generation. On this inventory page, and again, 75–80% of the time you're going to be using this page with all your machines. If I want to look at one of these particular machines, and I'm going to scroll down here to some of our other manufacturers. Let's say we're going to go to, let's do the next one down. If I click on more info for any machine that's on my floor here, it'll open up a separate page that has all the information specific to this machine. And here you can see the column categories of what I have. Now if I expand this field, you'll actually see every column category I've added to my dummy account. And if I want to edit these details, I can see also the columns that I have hidden from view, which would be if I want to add multiple program IDs. Going back to if you had, say, a Game King that had 20–30 programs on it, they would all be separated as different EPROMs or those program IDs for tracking. But I can change anything I want here. So if I'm moving this guy from bank 4 to bank 3, and I save those details, well, now he would be part of that bank. But I'm going to move him back.
David, Melissa wants to know if that's including progressive controller settings.
Absolutely. And when we go back to the other page, I'll actually show you one of those links to a progressive controller. Here, you'll see tabs at the bottom below the game information that has the components, so you can see all the components on this machine again, and a component info tab. And this component info tab is where you're going to be able to find all your signature information by just hitting the little plus sign next to any piece of software. So this is not software, so we'll close this guy. And depending upon what was on the certification letter, you'll be able to get your CDCKs or your MD5s or your SHA-1s. And then you can simply just pull the software if you need to, or verify it on the machine, depending upon what you're trying to verify. And then compare, say, the first 4 of the SHA-1 and the last 4. And as long as they match, generally speaking, you're going to be good to go. So this way you don't have to go try and dig out letters from GLI Access or go find the pile or the file cabinet or the folder or wherever you're keeping them. When you log in, you'll be able to pull those letters just by hitting the little PDF next to any piece of software. This will open up a separate page that'll have the certification letter and then all your information. And for people that are not real familiar with these letters, the best way to read these file numbers is in reverse. And what this is showing you, that this is the 24 submission in 2007 by Bally, and then the 22 would be the first jurisdiction that it was submitted for. And then MO is a modification of an existing approval. If it was a PA, it would be a prototype. SY system, RN would be an RNG, MA a math analysis. I know sometimes people to see the MO like think, hey, maybe that's Missouri, but it's actually just a naming acronym that we use for the type of submission it was. It's a little bit of information that some people know, but generally speaking, a lot of people are unfamiliar with. You have your game description in the letter, and then of course, if you go down below, you can see every program that's on this within this machine, or sorry, with this particular piece of software, the signature information, and more importantly, if you keep going down, you'll also see verification procedures for how to get the correct signature on that piece of software. So here you'll see it has the Alpha 2 verification utility, which is specific to the manufacturer. And if you ever see a letter that says, it doesn't say GLI Verify or Verify Plus or CDCK or any of the old programs, if it says something like this specific to this manufacturer, you can always contact Covatron or your current representative at the test lab, and then they'll be able to provide you with the utility because the manufacturer gives them to us to be able to provide to you. Assuming you don't ask for 30 or 40 at a time, it's within reason. But if you needed 1 or 2 for verifying this particular piece of software, then you would just contact us and we would send it out to you right away free of charge. The next tab I'm going to look at real quick is the Activities tab under the Machine Info. The Activities tab, and this one is specific to this machine, is auto-generated by the system. It cannot be altered and it cannot be deleted, and we will store the information for as long as you have the account up and running. So if you had it for 10 years, we can still go back and look at anything anybody had ever done within a time frame and then pull that information out. So for example, I'm going to go back to the main page and I'm going to click on the inventory category or the activity category on the left, and this will show me for the entire account. And I can search, again, I just need some little bit of information for what I'm looking for. So if I want to see when I had moved machines or components or categories or added notes or even verified stuff, I just have to look for a little bit of the information I want, and then I'll be able to see that information here. So I can see all the components we've ever added, the serial number of the machine that were added to, when they were added down to the second, who added them, and the IP address of the computer they were using at the time, which just is another level of accountability so that you know where people are when they're actually performing these. And if I wanted to pull out an export list of everything in general, if I delete just the added comp here, I can export this out to an Excel sheet or to a PDF to get all that information. So then, and I'll just highlight the top row here. For those of you who are not super familiar with Excel, this is a nice little trick for data filters. You can highlight the top row with your category headers, click Data, click Filter, and then you have drop-downs where you can see all the machines, specific activity types, time frames, users, and then again the IP address. So if I wanted to run, say, if I wanted to run an export on how many machines we've moved in the last month, the last quarter, how many we converted or verified within the last year, all that information can be pulled out here and then spruced up however you like aesthetically and then provided for whomever is asking for the information. And one more time, cannot be altered, cannot be deleted, and we will store it for as long as you want us to. The other tabs that you'll see on the More Info page for a machine are document storage. This is pretty self-explanatory. You just right-click on the category. So if we were adding a document to a piece of software or to the machine itself, and let's just say I want to upload a document here. Let's say I'm going to go to my verification document and upload it. The only limit is that each document you load needs to be 4 megabytes or less, which is still a pretty massive Word document, a pretty good picture, or a very grainy video. What I have seen people start to do is actually snap photos of the insides of the machines and use it as a teaching tool for new employees, or just if they're not familiar with that particular machine, and show you where the EEPROMs are if you need to pull them, compact flash, where the RAM clear chip would go, where your BIOS chips are. You know, this is the motherboard. It'll give you a good idea of how to essentially create your own verification manual specific to your property or properties. And if I ever want to download this, or anybody logs in wants to download this, they just right-click on the document and hit download, and then they'll be able to retrieve that document. And if I go back to my activity log, I can actually see, once I refresh the page here, that here's the document that I just added. And then if I wanted to add, say, notes on why I added that document, I simply just create a new row. Oh, 1 second here, I just locked up. I go to my inventory notes page, I hit new row, and I can write RAM clear machine for new row of RAM. So here's my note, and if I go back to my activity log and refresh it, you'll now see that there's the document I've added and the note that I added as well. And if anybody ever goes in here and changes a note, So let's say I want to edit this note. Say did not, sort of the opposite, and hit enter. It will still record the document, the note, and then somebody that edited the note and what they edited it to. Again, for layers of accountability and visibility on what everybody's doing that has an account. And then seals, the last tab, if you want to add a seal to a machine, you simply can add new seal, type in the seal number, seal type will say is tape, seal notes, we'll say RAM cleared, or new, we'll say JAWS to Happy Days, and my witness will say was Megan, and then I create that new seal. Well, now it's going to show me all that information on that seal. I can highlight it and I can edit this seal, or if I go back to our main page with the inventory, I can actually go look at that one particular machine, and I can click on the seal here, and it'll bring up all the information, all the seal information, which will give me, again, the date and time down to the second, who did it, why they did it, who witnessed it, and then if I want to edit a seal, I can change it, or add a new seal if I need duplicate seals. So if I have 2 or 3 seals on one machine, I can do that as well. And if I break the seal altogether, got to put information in there, or even if I just hit the little X here to remove that seal, now my activity log for that machine under the More Info page, or just the general one, I can see here now when a seal was added, when it was broken. And if I just type seal in here in the activity, I can see every seal that's ever been added or broken to my account. I know we're getting sort of close on time here, so what I would like to do now is show you real quickly. I'm going to go back to the inventory page and just show you that progressive controller from the question that was earlier. And as I scroll down here, you can see every component again, but you can also click on any one of these components to get additional information on what it is, and it'll open up a More Info page for that specific piece of software. So here we can see multiple items. If I click on, say, this one right here and open up this page, here you can see here's system hardware. Here you can see more system hardware for the Oasis platform. Here's some BIOS chip stuff. And then here's a Vertex progressive controller and hardware. If you were to click on, say, a personality program to get more info on one of those, not only will you be able to see sort of the same tabs with notes and document storage, activity log, but here's another way for you to be able to see if it's approved or not, get letters, a tab for signature information, and then it also has a pay tables tab, which will show you all the pay tables that are configurable on this game. And if I expand one of these, it'll also show me the theoretical return based on the amount of plays, if you love mathematics, for the game. Anywhere from 1,000, which shows my return at 92%, to 163%, which obviously is not reflective of the lifespan of the game. But if you go down here to, say, 10 billion plays, then it's 86% and 86%, which is obviously is much closer. The last thing that I want to show you real quick is there's a users tab here. When we get an account set up, there's generally one super user, and then that super user has control of the account, and then they can invite as many people as they want after that. And each person, you'll choose which location they can see, whether it's your single location, multiple locations, maybe it's just a warehouse, everything. Put in their email address, and then you get to choose if they are read or write only. So if they can have access to actually change the data, or if you just want them to be able to get in there and see information, is really dependent upon what role they have and what you want to give them. And then you'll be able to manage all the users down here below. There's much more functionality to the system, sort of ancillary functions, and I'm just going to show you one more real quick before we get to our final questions. And as you get familiar with the system, you'll start to see this. It's very malleable for pulling information out for what you're looking for. one of the things we added is under the tools function is a way to create a random machine list by number or by percentage. So if you wanted to create a random machine list for, say, to audit 10% of your floor each year, then you could create that list and it will randomly pull from, say you had 1,000 machines, it'll pull those 100 machines, and then you'll have that list to be able to verify. And one more quick thing is, if you didn't have a device that had the capability of reaching the internet, you had terrible internet when you're walking the floor and you're trying to verify machines, if I go to the component info for any machine I want, I can do a full export of all the software on this machine and then essentially have it be something that I can print out like this here that'll actually expand every piece of software within that machine and give me all the information I need without having to be connected to the internet. So if I was doing 10 machines or 5 machines, I could print out 5 or 10 of these, and then I could walk and I could see my software, and the system will automatically expand the stuff that is verifiable with signatures versus the stuff that isn't. Like the top line here you can actually see, and then the third line which actually has the controller we were just looking at before. So do we have any last questions here before I tell you about how you can get me to clean your entire slot file for free?
David, there were quite a few questions come through, so I think we can go through half of them now, and then at the end we can answer the rest of them if that sounds okay with you.
That's perfect.
Okay, cool. So under the inventory page, can inventory include software stored? William would like to know.
Okay, so here's something that you can think about that somebody said to me before. They had a box of EEPROMs, maybe 30 or 40 of them, and they didn't know how to track those because they weren't in any machines. They actually had 4 or 5 bins in a cabinet, and then they're trying to figure out how can I track this stuff to see if it's revoked or not and not put non-compliant software in machines on our floor. So what I did was we went into the machine warehouse location, and you can have warehouse locations for your account in general or for specific locations. So if you had 10 locations and you wanted 10 warehouse locations attached to each one of those, I don't mean 100, I mean so 20 altogether, then you could do that. But what we did was we actually went into his warehouse and we created a new row, and I called the row IGT EEPROM cabinet 1. Because I can create a machine line and call it whatever I want. The only time it'll give me errors is if I'm duplicating the serial number. So I called it IGT EEPROM cabinet 1, and I right-clicked and I added components. I added 81 components to that bin for him. I actually added 162, but I got impatient and I double-clicked, so then I stacked the commands. But it loaded 162 pieces of software to that one line. And now anytime one of those pieces of software is revoked, he gets the email alert real time. Everybody does that has the account. And then he knows to go in there and then pull that stuff or destroy it or send it back or designate it however he likes. And he could always create a column and name it destroyed, sent back to manufacturer, or destroyed in general, or lease stuff, whatever whatever nomenclature you use specific to your group. You can add locations and call them that, or you could add specific columns as designators to be able to filter that information as well. I hope that makes sense.
Feature. Yeah. Does Iris maintain all settings as well as software?
Settings, so you mean specific to a user, I'm guessing? If you have the system set up for how you want to view it, you can save particular views for just your stuff. So if I want to manage my columns and remove everything, and I only want to see serial numbers, seal information, and then if stuff was actually verified, I'll say the data was verified too. Well, now I'm only looking at these 4 columns, and I can actually save this view as my own particular, as David's view or Megan's view or your own particular view, Melissa's view, and then you'd be able to log in and then have it show you that as well. But there are account settings here at the top of the page that'll give you the ability to make sure you're getting those real-time status alerts of software changes, and then make sure that it's only loading an inventory page one time as opposed to defaulting to the reset every time. If you wanted to compact all the components so it shows like 1 and then like a 3 next to it for multiple components on the machine, and then you could hover over those. But generally speaking, what I think is the best view so I can see everything is to make sure that these component columns are expanded so that I can see every piece of software that's on each one of the machines on my floor. And then you could allow people to duplicate seals or not duplicate seals as well. And if there were too many views that got out of control, you could always reset all the views if that's your preference.
All right, I've got one more question for you before we move on, and we'll answer the rest at the end. Is the seal identifier required to be a number, or can it have both letters and numbers? Daniel is curious.
I don't think I've ever done anything but numbers, but let's try right now and we can find out. I'm almost positive that the only preventative action is that you can't duplicate the seal number. But if I go ahead and add a seal here, let's go and do this. So we'll just say it's was it Daniel? Let's say it was Daniel 1. So type tape. Here we go. Survey says you can do both alpha and numeric. So we all learned something here today.
Yes, we did. That's a good trick.
Okay, so what we'll do now is I'll go ahead and have Megan send out or show you guys the handouts. We have a marketing one-page brochure which will give you information on Iris Online and also Iris Enterprise, and then just a quick 6-slide PowerPoint on what we just covered. But if you are interested in having me clean your slot file for you for free, simply contact me, sign up for the free trial for 90 days, see if you like it or don't like it. But in the very beginning, when I get your slot file or slot files, I'm going to load them into the system. And when I create your account, I'm going to be able to see every piece of software you have that's revoked on your floor or non-mandatory upgrade or conditional revocation. And then when I do webinar training with you, just like we're doing now, but with your specific group and your specific information, we're going to go through all those non-compliant pieces of software and get them resolved. And it's not until I'm done training your group that the 90-day free trial even starts. So if on day 89, if you're like, listen, it's a good program, but it doesn't really work for us, you don't pay a penny, and I cleaned your entire slot file for you. So why would you not want me to do that for you? So with that, we'll go ahead and anybody who wants to stick around with some final questions can, but I thank you guys very much for being part of this webinar today. Hopefully it wasn't, again, like drinking from a fire hose, and if you have any questions, you have all my information, and I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions or concerns that anybody has moving forward. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful day, everyone.